The galaxy burned in silence. Worlds once crowned in imperial glory lay as hollowed husks, their oceans boiled away, their skies drifting with the skeletal remains of ships that would never again see a port. Stars, once proud in their brilliance, now dim to a dying ember, their light choked by the ash of 1,000 wars. And in the long shadow of the Emperor's realm, the echo of the war of the beast still whispered through the void. A wound in the soul of mankind that no victory could ever mend. It was said the Imperium had survived, that the beast was gone, that the threat had been cut out like a malignant tumor, and humanity could breathe again. But there are victories that rot from within, and there are wars whose end is only a beginning. We have walked the length of time together, you and I, tracing the scars of empires. We have watched gods bleed and immortals fall. We have carried the truth of it in our hearts, that no empire, however vast, is eternal. And I tell you now, with all the quiet weight of memory, we have loved you for walking these paths with us. We care for you more than you may ever know. Before we begin the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now grab your coffee, and let's get started. The last days of the War of the Beast had been painted in the colours of madness. In those final months, I, Lord Commander Elric Caesseron of the Imperial Fist's Honour Guard, had believed we could win. We had rallied fleets shattered beyond repair, raised armies from the bones of dead worlds, and bound together 100 bickering lords under one banner. I had believed, as all fools do before the fall, that loyalty and sacrifice were enough. But the truth came with the scream of breaking void steel. It came with the betrayal of a man I had once called brother, High Admiral Valen, who sold the location of our staging fleet to the Orcs for the promise of survival. 23 worlds burned because of him. The screams from those worlds, I still hear them, even now, echoing in the dark places between waking and sleep. That betrayal was the final knife. We crushed the beast's war moon. We shattered their armadas, but something inside the Imperium broke with it. Our victory was a corpse dressed in golden robes. I had hoped that with the passing centuries the wound might heal, that the High Lords, in their fortress palaces on Terra, would guide the Imperium to strength again. But when the astropathic signal came 3 days ago, every illusion of peace turned to dust. The signal was faint, stitched together with ancient Imperial cipher keys that hadn't been used since the days of the Great Crusade. Buried within the static was a sound no human voice could make. The guttural, grinding war chant of the Orcs. The same chant that had heralded the beast's final assault. The same sound that had echoed across the burning skies of Ardamantua. It came from the edges of the Colaris Expanse, a region so cursed and so blighted that it had been sealed on all Imperial charts for over 5 millennia. No ship had returned from it since, and yet the signal pulsed from its heart, slow and patient, like the beat of some colossal war drum. I stared at the Auspex display in the dim bridge of the Spear of Dawn, the flagship I had commanded for almost 2 centuries. The stars beyond the viewing port seemed colder than usual, their light strained by the distance and the dust of forgotten wars. Around me, my bridge crew moved with the quiet precision of men and women who knew something was wrong, but had not yet put their fears into words. Lord Commander, my second Captain Varric approached, holding a data slate. Astropath confirms origin point. Colaris Expanse. But there's something else. I took the slate. The transmission contained more than a war chant. Hidden in its low-frequency layers was a name, one I had prayed never to hear again. It was the name of a man long dead, a name spoken in the last hour before the beast fell, in a place where only 3 living souls had stood, and 2 of them had died there. If this name had reached me, it meant someone had survived, and if they had survived, they carried with them the truth of what happened on that day, a truth that could unmake the Imperium from within. The bridge felt smaller, the air heavier. Somewhere far in the ship's lower decks, the machine spirits groaned in their steel tombs, as if sensing the weight of the decision before me. The orders from Terra would be simple. Ignore the signal, hold position, and report any breach of Imperial quarantine protocols. But there was no doubt in my mind. If I obeyed, the truth would remain buried, and whatever the signal heralded would fester in the dark until it was too late. I have lived too long to believe that loyalty to the High Lords is loyalty to the Emperor. The galaxy does not give us the luxury of obedience without question. I turned to Captain Varric. "Prepare the fleet," I said. We set course for Colaris. Somewhere in the dark, beyond the reach of our dying suns, the beast may have been waiting. Or worse, something wearing its shadow. And so began the last journey of the Spear of Dawn. The Spear of Dawn slid into the void like a predator stalking prey. No fanfare, no declaration of war. Only the silent shifting of metal bones as the Geller field hummed to life and the ship's engines whispered their ancient hymn. The fleet moved with us, 5 capital ships and a dozen escorts, each bearing scars older than the crew who now walked their decks. The warp translation was smooth, too smooth. The void between worlds has moods, and the veterans can feel them. On that day, the warp was quiet, as if holding its breath. Even the ship's cherubim and servitors went about their duties with a mechanical calm that felt unnatural. The Cholaris expanse lay ahead, like an unlit, wound in the stars. On the star maps, it was an empty blotch, devoid of recorded worlds or patrol routes, sealed off during the earliest years of the Imperium's reign. In truth, it was older than that. Older than mankind's dominion. Older than the Emperor's dream. The transmission still played on the Auspex recorders, cycling every 12 hours. That deep, guttural orc chant, layered with Imperial clearance codes that should have been impossible to forge. And beneath it, that name. My name. Spoken in a voice I had not heard for 5 centuries. It was the voice of High Admiral Valen, the man who had betrayed us, the man I had seen die. The memory rose like bile, the heat of the war moon's interior, the stench of burning promethium, the sound of Valen's voice as he confessed to buying time for himself at the cost of 23 worlds. I had left him there, in the collapsing corridors of the Beast Fortress, as the detonations tore the structure apart. I had seen him die, but the void is full of lies. Lord Commander, Captain Varric's voice cut through my thoughts. Inquisitor Rin arrives on the bridge. Of course she had. The High Lords never let a matter like this pass without a leash. Inquisitor Myra Rin entered as if she already owned the deck. Her rosette gleamed cold in the dim light, and the seals of the Ordo Xenos draped her shoulder like a badge of judgment. She did not salute. Inquisitors do not salute. "Commander Caesseron," she said, her tone clipped. "You received my orders." "I received a list of restrictions," I replied, without turning from the viewing port, "none of which I intend to obey." "Then allow me to repeat them for the record," she said, stepping closer. "The Colaris Expanse is quarantined under Edict Cuthon 22. Any violation of Imperial restriction protocols constitutes high treason. The High Lords have ordered that the signal be monitored, not pursued. Your orders are to hold position at the sector border until further command is received. She spoke like someone used to obedience. I turned to face her fully. And if the beast's shadow rises again while we wait, will the High Lords command the galaxy to hold position as well? Her eyes narrowed. You presume to know the stakes better than the Senatorum Imperialis? No, I said. I presume to remember them. I was there when the beast tore a segmentum apart. I saw what it took to end him. If there is even a fraction of that threat hiding in Cholaris, waiting will kill more than disobedience ever will. She studied me for a long moment. You have no proof. I slid the slate across the tactical table. She glanced at it, and her face didn't change, but the stillness in her eyes told me she'd seen it too. The name, the voice, the impossibility. Veylan is dead, she said flatly. I thought so, I replied. We stared at each other in silence, the hum of the ship's systems the only sound between us. She was the first to break. Very well, we go in. But understand this. If I see anything that compromises Imperial security, I will end it, and I will end you if necessary. It was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. Hours later, as the fleet edged closer to the Cholaris border, the Auspex began to distort. The signal grew louder, the orc chant pounding like the heartbeat of some vast beast. Data streams fractured, images warped into jagged bursts of color. Tech priests chanted Binharic counter-prayers, their voices echoing off the steel like broken bells. And then, something new. A second signal, weaker, woven beneath the first. A human voice, ragged with pain, repeating a single phrase over and over. The green god sleeps. The key is in the dark. Do not wake him. It was Veylan's voice. The bridge fell silent. Every soul present felt it, the weight of words that were not just warning but prophecy. I gave the order. All ships form into spearhead formation. We're going in. The Cholaris expanse loomed ahead, a darkness within darkness. Somewhere beyond it, the truth waited. And truth, in the Imperium, is rarely a blessing. The Cholaris expanse swallowed us whole. There was no gradual fade of starlight, no slow descent into shadow. One moment the void was there, speckled with cold fire, the endless tapestry of the Emperor's realm, and the next, it was gone. The stars vanished as if snuffed by an unseen hand. What remained was a blackness so complete it pressed against the viewing ports like a living thing. The Spear of Dawn groaned as we crossed the quarantine boundary. Machine spirits wailed through the bulkheads, their song turning discordant. Cherubim fluttered in blind panic before vanishing into service ducts. Even the Gellerfield felt different, not weaker, but aware. We navigated by Auspex alone, the void beyond refusing to give up any light. The fleet moved in silence, each ship's Vox traffic reduced to terse confirmations and data pings. Even the Inquisitor kept to herself, though I caught her studying the darkness for longer than seemed necessary. The orc chant pulsed through the Auspex feed now without distortion, clear as if sung in the next compartment. The second signal, Veylan's ragged voice, grew fainter, as though retreating deeper into the black. We followed it for 19 standard hours before we found the first wreck. It was the Eminence of Faith, an Imperial Grand Cruiser lost during the War of the Beast. I knew its name from casualty lists. It had vanished in M39, presumed destroyed in the final counter-offensive. Seeing it now was like finding the bones of a brother in the dust. Her hull was split open along her spine, as if torn by claws the size of cathedrals. No fires burned, no lights glowed, but she drifted with purpose. Not the random spin of dead mass, but a slow, deliberate arc, as if something unseen still guided her. We approached under minimal power. I ordered a boarding team. The air aboard was stale, cold enough to crystallize breath. Bulkhead paint had peeled into curling flakes, drifting like paper ash in the weak light of our helmets. There were no bodies, no signs of battle beyond the initial wounds to her hull. And then we reached the bridge. The crew were there, all of them. They sat at their stations, gaunt and pale, uniforms still neat, eyes open but unseeing. Their skin had the faint greenish tint of deep decay, but there was no rot, no smell of death. Some still had their hands resting on controls, fingers locked in place as though frozen in the act of duty. Tech Priest Helvar scanned them and recoiled. "They are alive," whispered through the Vox. My stomach turned. Alive? No heartbeat, no respiration, but the neural impulses, faint, erratic, they are alive. We found the source of the signal in the astropathic chamber. The astropath herself was a withered husk, her flesh clinging to bone, yet her mouth moved with slow, jerking motions. When we drew closer, the words were clear. Valen's words. "The green god sleeps. The key is in the dark. Do not wake him." I felt the deck shift beneath my boots. The eminence of faith was moving, not drifting, moving. Without engines, without crew, it was altering its trajectory. "Pull back," I ordered. "Now." We withdrew to the Spear of Dawn and cut the magnetic tether. The cruiser drifted away, but her path was unmistakable. She was heading deeper into Cholaris, toward a single Auspex contact far beyond our current range. Varric's voice was tight. "Lord Commander, the contact is enormous. Mass reading exceeds that of a war moon." The bridge fell silent. Memories clawed at me, the beast fortress, the scale of its engines, the shadow it cast over entire continents. Inquisitor Rin broke the silence. "We pursue." For once, we were in agreement. Hours passed as the fleet closed the distance. The blackness outside began to change, faint motes of light flickering in the void. At first I thought they were stars, but they were wrong. Too close, too bright, too alive. They swirled around us in vast patterns, like the eyes of predators circling prey. Then the object came into view. It was not a war moon. It was not even a ship. It was a husk of a god machine, half buried in a drifting field of debris. An orc construct on a scale I had never seen, its design older and cruder than anything in recorded history. Its plating was pitted with age, its towers shattered, but deep within its structure, something pulsed with a slow green light. And there, on the outer hull, sealed within a shattered spire, was the source of the human signal. A small Imperial shuttle, its beacon still active after centuries. Valen had been here, and whatever this place was, it had kept him alive. The shuttle was impossibly intact. No corrosion from the void, no micrometeor, scars. Its hull gleamed faintly under the green pulses that throbbed from the orc god machine. Even before we docked, I could feel the wrongness, like approaching a relic of the Emperor, only to find it whispering in your own voice. We boarded with a full kill team. Rin came as well, her bolt pistol drawn, but her rosette left visible, as if the machine might respect the symbol of Imperial authority. I doubted it would. Inside, the air was warm and stale, smelling faintly of oil and copper. The shuttle's interior was untouched by time. Lights flickered in the ceiling. Servitors stood idle at their stations. At the rear, past the passenger benches, a sealed stasis chamber hissed softly. I knew who would be inside before we opened it. The glass parted with a sluggish sigh, releasing a faint mist. High Admiral Valen lay within, exactly as I remembered him. The proud, scarred face, the hawk-like eyes. His hair was streaked with more grey, but otherwise he looked preserved. His eyes opened. "Caesseron," he said, his voice low, as if we'd spoken only yesterday. "You took your time." My hand tightened on my weapon. "You died." "Apparently not," he replied, a ghost of a smile on his lips. Then his gaze darkened. "You shouldn't have come here." Rin stepped forward. "You sent the signal." "Why?" He shook his head slowly. "That wasn't a summons. That was a warning. The green god sleeps, but he stirs in his dreams. The orcs didn't build this place. They found it, and they woke something they couldn't control. The walls of the shuttle groaned, as if something vast shifted outside. The green pulses from the god machine quickened, beating now like the rhythm of some vast waking heart. Valen's voice dropped to a rasp. "You have to leave. Now. Seal this place. Forget you ever." The deck shuddered violently. Something had latched onto the shuttle's hull. A klaxon wailed, red light flooding the cabin. The kill team moved to the hatch. Too late. Metal screamed as the airlock was torn open, the void briefly howling before the emergency shutters slammed down. They came through in a rush. Orcs, but not as I had ever seen them. Their flesh was threaded with metal cables, their eyes glowing with the same green as the god machine's core. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, as though puppeted by something that didn't care how the joints bent. Bolters roared, cutting down the first wave in bursts of gore and sparks. One of them kept moving even after its head was blown apart, its body lurching forward until Varric smashed it back with a power fist. Valen shouted over the din. "They're not alive. The machine makes them." Rin shot one through the chest. "Then we kill the machine." We fell back toward the docking port, firing in bursts. The orcs kept coming, from the walls, from the ceiling, from hidden hatches we hadn't seen. By the time we reached the Spear of Dawn, the boarding, alarms were already sounding across the fleet. The god machine was waking. From the bridge viewport, I saw it begin to move. Towering spires groaned as they reoriented, massive plates sliding aside to reveal glowing apertures like the eyes of a predator. The debris field around it spun faster, pulled into spirals by some vast gravitational force. "Lord Commander," Varric said grimly, "the machine is generating a warp signature. It's calling something." Valen stood beside me now, his face pale. "Not something, Caesseron. Him I didn't ask who. I already knew. The beast had been slain, but the orcs worshipped strength above all. And gods, even dead ones, have a way of returning when enough voices call their name. All ships, I ordered, my voice cutting through the chaos. Target the core. Fire at will." The fleet's guns thundered, lances and macro batteries tearing into the god machine's surface. The green light flared in answer, tendrils of energy lashing out to swat entire escorts from existence. Every strike we made only seemed to make it angrier. And then the Vox came alive with a single word, spoken in a voice that was not orc and not human. A voice that carried weight like a planet falling. "Awaken." The green light became blinding. The light pierced the void like the death of a star. Within the core of the god machine, a chamber long sealed in darkness bloomed with emerald fire. The very air seemed to vibrate with ancient power, as if the heartbeat of a forgotten god had been wrenched back to life. We moved cautiously, but nothing could have prepared us for what we found. Encased within a cradle of biomechanical sinew and glowing conduits, lay a figure unlike any I had ever seen. Clad in fractured ceramite, His armor bore the sigils of the Imperial legions, yet it was twisted by green veins of orc biomass, as if the machine itself had grafted him into its unholy design. His face was cold and beautiful in its cruelty, a visage of a warrior born of starfire and shadow. But it was the eyes that stopped me, burning amber, alive with fury and endless centuries of hatred. The Primarch Zarak, the betrayer. Long ago, before the Imperium shattered under the weight of its own ambition, Zarak had been a son of the Emperor, forged from the genetic fires that birthed our greatest champions. But in the twilight of the Great Crusade, he had fallen, seduced by the beast, by the promise of power beyond mortality. He had made an alliance with the orcs, binding his fate to theirs in a pact sealed by blood and war. He had vanished during the last days of the War of the Beast, his name struck from all records, as if the Imperium sought to erase his treachery from history. Now, centuries later, he stirred from his endless slumber, awakened not by mercy, but by desperation. Kesseron, his voice echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant, a command that made my soul tremble. You still breathe. Yet you stand on the edge of oblivion. I gripped my bolter tightly, feeling the weight of the betrayal not just in his words, but in the centuries of loss behind them. Zarak, I said, voice steady despite the storm within, your war is over. You are a ghost, a curse best left forgotten. He smiled, cruel and cold. A curse. No, I am the reckoning. I am the shadow that the Emperor's light cast away. You will see the truth of your salvation soon enough. Tech Priest Helvar stepped forward, his mechadendrites trembling. My lord, the machine melds with his essence. He is the core. Without him, it cannot function. With him, the orc's rage is focused and unyielding. Zarak's eyes flickered with a terrible light. The Imperium has always been blind, trusting in relics and decrees while the galaxy burns beneath its feet. I offer you a choice, serve the future, or be swept away with the past. The weight of his words pressed down like the void itself. Yet in that moment, I knew the truth I feared most. The Primarch's resurrection was no salvation. It was the herald of a new war, a war that would consume us all. I glanced at Rin and Varric. Their faces were pale, but resolute. We had no choice now but to face what we had awoken. Outside the chamber, the god machine thrummed with newfound life, its engines stirring like a beast risen from the grave. The war of the beast was not over. It had only just begun. The corridors of the god machine echoed with the faint hum of corrupted power. Every step we took seemed swallowed by the vast living steel around us. The green veins pulsed like veins of some colossal organism, and the air tasted of ancient rot and whispered betrayal. I stood beside Inquisitor Rin and Captain Varric, the three of us drawn into the center of the unholy engine room. There, the monstrous heart of the machine beat with slow, terrible rhythm, its surface a fusion of warp-forged steel and something far older, far darker. Zarak's presence filled the chamber, a shadow stretching over all of us. Yet beneath the veneer of godlike authority, I saw the man behind the mask, a man worn by exile, consumed by ambition and bitterness. My lord, Helvar's voice broke through the tension. The fusion between Zarak and this engine is complete. His immortality is bound to it. Should the machine die, so does he. But his will strengthens it beyond any known mechanism. I met Zarak's amber gaze. And what of the Imperium's people? What of the billions who look to the Emperor's light for hope? His smile was a blade. Hope is a lie, Kasseron. A lie told to bind the weak. The galaxy is a furnace of endless war. I offer order through fire and domination, immortality forged in conquest. Will you stand against the tide or be swept away with it? The word stung, the weight of truth twisted into seduction. I thought of the worlds lost in the war of the beast, the lives sacrificed on altars of ambition and pride. Was this new war a necessary rebirth or a final death? Suddenly, the shuttle's vox crackled. Urgent reports of incoming vessels swarmed the perimeter. Loyalist Imperial reinforcements, unaware of the horrors we now faced, had entered the expanse. More lives, marching towards slaughter, Rin hissed. We must warn them. No, I replied, voice heavy with resolve. If we betray this secret, the entire Imperium plunges into chaos. This lie must be kept, for now. A silence fell between us, thick with unspoken dread. The first lie was born, the lie of omission, the lie that would bind us to a dark fate. As Zarek's laughter echoed through the living steel, I realized the true cost of survival, betrayal not just of others, but of ourselves. The war of the beast was no longer behind us. It was inside us, whispered in shadows, written in blood, and it had only just begun. The void beyond the Cholaris expanse churned with quiet menace. Our warnings failed to reach the reinforcements. Like moths drawn to a distant flame, they moved with blind faith, steel leviathans and battle barges loaded with the Emperor's finest, unaware of the horror waiting in the dark. I stood on the bridge of the Spear of Dawn, watching the fleet gather. Captain Varric's face was tight, lips pressed into a thin line. Inquisitor Rin leaned heavily on the railing, her eyes shadowed with the burden of knowledge none should bear. The High Lords will call this madness when they learn, she said softly. They will brand it heresy and send purge fleets. But this... I nodded slowly. This is more than heresy. 'Tis the dying breath of a god, the god machine pulsed through the Auspex, an unrelenting heartbeat drawing all eyes to its slow but inexorable awakening. It was no mere weapon. It was a monument to ambition and betrayal, a living fortress forged by Zarek's dark will. In the quiet moments before battle, my mind wandered to the men and women who would soon die because of choices made in shadow. I thought of Valan, that traitor who had warned us in his last breath, and of Zarek, who now offered a future drenched in war. Loyalty was a fragile thing, betrayal an inevitable shadow. The first strike came without warning. Green lances ripped through void, tearing apart escort ships before they could even raise their shields. The orc-infused abominations swarmed from the god machine's depths, clawing and tearing with unnatural fury. The Spear of Dawn roared to life, her macro cannons blazing, but every volley was met with overwhelming force. The war was no longer just against the Xenos, it was against the darkness in the heart of our own legacy. Inquisitor Rin's voice cut through the cacophony, sharp as a blade. We must strike at Zarek himself. Without him, the machine will falter. Varric's fist slammed the command table. But how do we reach him? The heart is a fortress within a fortress. I swallowed the bitter truth. We make our own path through the storm. The fleet, held together by sheer will and desperation, pushed forward. Every kill was bought with blood, every victory a step closer to oblivion. And somewhere, beneath the metal and green fire, Zarek waited, patient, immortal, and ready to remold the galaxy in his image. The storm was gathering, and when it broke, no soul would remain untouched by its fury. Darkness fell over the god machine like a shroud, deeper than the void outside. Our fleet pressed closer, battered but unyielding. The living fortress pulsed with green energy, its defences weaving a deadly web of fire and steel. The siege had begun. Inside the Spear of Dawn, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The crew moved like ghosts, their faces pale but resolute. Captain Varric's jaw was set hard. Inquisitor Rin's eyes flickered with a mixture of fear and fierce determination. "Lord Commander," Varric reported, "the boarding teams are ready. We breach at Sector 7 Alpha." I nodded. "We have no choice. The heart of this abomination lies within. If we do not strike now, all is lost." The drop pods thundered through the hull breaches, igniting corridors with the fires of war. The orc-engineered abominations met us with brutal ferocity, half machine, half Xenos monstrosities that fought with the desperation of the damned. In the darkness, the weight of centuries pressed upon me. I recalled Valen's warning. The green god sleeps, but the key lies in the dark. What key? And was I about to turn it? The deeper we moved, the more the god machine seemed alive. Walls pulsated, corridors shifted as if breathing. Shadows moved with intent, and the whispers of forgotten souls clawed at my mind. We reached the inner sanctum. Zarek awaited, seated upon a throne forged of bone and circuitry, his amber eyes blazing. "Welcome, brother," he said, voice dripping with bitter irony. "Do you come to condemn me, or to join?" I felt the burden of our shared bloodline, the bitter fracture of loyalty and betrayal stretching across centuries. "No," I said, raising my bolter. "I come to end this nightmare." The battle that followed was both physical and spiritual, a clash of ideals, of histories written in blood and fire. Zarek fought not just with strength, but with the weight of forgotten promises and shattered dreams. And as our weapons sang and steel met steel, I knew this siege was more than a battle for survival. It was the reckoning of a fractured empire. The air hung heavy with the scent of burning promethium and shattered hope. Within the shattered sanctum of the god machine, the clash between Caesseron and Zarek echoed like a dirge for a dying empire. Each strike was a story, of loyalty broken, of dreams torn asunder, and of the unyielding weight of an oath long fractured. Zarek's amber eyes burned with a fury that was more sorrow than rage. "You fight not for the Emperor," he said, voice low and haunted. "You fight for ghosts of a past that will not save you." I tightened my grip on my bolter. "The Emperor's light may falter, but it never dies." He laughed, a sound hollow and bitter. "Light blinds, Commander. It blinds those who refuse to see the truth of their own shadows." The corridors trembled as the god machine reacted to our conflict, walls folding and shifting like the restless mind of a dying god. Behind Zarek's defiance was a broken man, a son abandoned, twisted by exile and betrayal. The weight of his immortal curse pressed upon him, yet he embraced it, wielding his torment as both sword and shield. "Why did you come back?" I demanded. "Why bring this ruin upon us all?" His gaze softened, flickering with a memory of something lost, because even gods must answer to their past. Because in the ashes of betrayal, I seek redemption or oblivion. Our battle faltered as alarms blared throughout the fortress. Reinforcements had broken through the outer defences. The war was far from over. I took a breath, the first in what felt like centuries. "This ends now, Zarek." He nodded slowly, a tragic acceptance in his eyes. "So be it." As our weapons locked and the siege raged on outside, the fractured oath that bound us both came crashing down. In the shadows of the dying god machine, the fate of an empire teetered on the edge of a blade. The final hour had come. The god machine's core blazed like a dying star, casting long, eerie shadows across the shattered battleground. Outside, the Spear of Dawn and the battered fleet held their ground, battered but unbroken. The siege had reached its crucible. Inside the heart of the machine, I faced Zarek once more. The weight of centuries hung between us. Brother against brother, loyalty against vengeance. The fractured oath we once shared now lay buried beneath ash and blood. Around us, the twisted corridors shook as the living fortress convulsed in its death throes. Orc-infused monstrosities poured in from every direction, their green eyes burning with savage hunger. Kaisoron, Zarak's voice was cold steel. You could still stand with me. Together, we could reshape the stars. I raised my bolter, the weight familiar and resolute. There is no future in betrayal. The battle was a tempest, weapons blazing, souls clashing amidst ruin. Every shot echoed with the sorrow of lost empires, every strike a testament to sacrifice. In the chaos, I saw Rin rallying the boarding teams, her eyes fierce, unwavering. Varric fell beside her, clutching a plasma pistol, his last breath a curse upon the machine's dark heart. I pressed forward, every step fueled by the ghosts of the fallen and the hope that one day the Emperor's light might shine again. Zarak faltered, his amber eyes flickering with something almost like regret. Tell them I was not the monster they made. Me I will, I said, voice choked with grief, but only if you fall here. With a final roar, we clashed. The strike shattered the silence, a burst of fire and shattered ceramite. Zarek's form collapsed, the machine's pulse dimming as the last breath of a betrayed god faded into shadow. Outside, the fleet cheered, but the victory was hollow. The cost was carved deep into our souls. The war of the beast was over, but its scars would last for millennia. The silence that followed was heavier than any war cry. The god machine lay dormant, its towering form broken and lifeless amid the drifting wreckage of Colaris. The green light that once pulsed with terrible vitality had faded to a cold, eerie stillness. We moved through the ruins like mourners, each step a reminder of the cost borne by so many. The deck was littered with the bodies of men and Xenos alike, warriors caught in the endless cycle of war and betrayal. Inquisitor Rin knelt beside a fallen tech priest, whispering prayers to the Omnissiah. Varric's name was spoken softly, a fragile echo in the vast emptiness. I stood at the edge of the shattered throne room, staring down at the shattered remnants of Zarek's armor. The betrayer was dead, but his shadow lingered, a dark stain on the legacy we all shared. Caesseron, Rin said quietly. What now? I looked out at the fractured stars beyond the viewport, the distant fires of a galaxy still aflame. We rebuild, we remember, and we carry the burden of this war in our souls. But deep within me, a question gnawed, a seed of doubt sown by the war's bitter lessons. Had we truly won, or had we merely delayed the inevitable fall? The war of the beast was a wound that would never fully heal, and as the ashes settled, I knew one truth remained. Empires rise and fall, but the price of ambition is eternal. The galaxy spun on, indifferent to the wreckage left in our wake. Stars burned with the same indifferent fire, worlds teetered on the edge of chaos, and the endless war marched forward, unchanged, unforgiving. In the aftermath, whispers spread like ghosts through Imperial halls and forgotten war zones. Tales of Zarek, the betrayer Primarch, were spoken in hushed tones, half myth, half warnings. Some called him a fallen hero, others a harbinger of doom. I stood once more on the bridge of the Spear of Dawn, the scars of battle etched into every panel and every soul aboard her decks. Inquisitor Rin and Captain Varric's memory lingered like silent ghosts, reminders of sacrifice and bitter truths. But it was the question of immortality that haunted me most, the cost of those who live beyond time, watching empires crumble beneath their feet. Zarak's curse was not merely his own. It was the fate of all who seek to wield power eternal. The longer we live, the more we lose. Yet hope flickered, a fragile ember in the void. New alliances formed, old wounds sought healing, and the galaxy held its breath. The war of the beast had ended, but its shadows stretched into tomorrow, a warning etched into the stars themselves. And as I looked out at the infinite darkness, I knew this was but the beginning of another story. One written in loss, betrayal, and the eternal struggle for survival. The stars had grown cold, their light dimmed beneath a gathering storm. The fragile peace we fought to hold was unraveling, thread by thread, as old wounds bled anew. Rumors of scattered orc warbands rallying beneath hidden warlords reached our ears. Whispers of forbidden technology stolen from the ruins of the God Machine. And worse, signs that Zarak's influence lingered in shadows deeper than we dared admit. On the bridge of the Spear of Dawn, I stood with Inquisitor Rin and the few trusted officers who remained. The weight of command pressed down like a crushing tide, each decision a razor's edge between salvation and ruin. "Kesoron," Rin said, voice low and grave. "The galaxy will not wait. The Imperium fractures, and the Beast War is far from over." Her words echoed the truth I'd tried to ignore. Our enemies multiplied, not just without but within. Loyalties fractured as fear and ambition spread like plague. The truth was simple and terrible. The reckoning was coming, and no amount of valor could stop its tide. I felt the eyes of history upon me, the legacy of the Primarchs, the fallen empire, and the endless war that shaped us all. In that moment, I made my choice, not for glory or vengeance, but for the faintest spark of hope that still flickered in the void. The reckoning approaches, and I would stand against it, no matter the cost. The walls themselves seemed to weep with the weight of treachery. Within the labyrinthine depths of the shattered God Machine, betrayal's poison spread like wildfire. Trust shattered, alliances crumbled, and shadows twisted friend into foe. Inquisitor Rin's gaze held a storm, resolve laced with sorrow, as she confronted the truth none dared speak aloud. "Kesoron," she said, voice trembling yet fierce. "We are not alone in this darkness. There are those who would see us fall from within." The revelation was a blade twisting in my gut. A faction loyal neither to the Emperor nor to Zarak sought to claim the machine's power for themselves. A cabal of traitors cloaked in whispered promises and hidden daggers. Varric's last warning echoed in my mind. A sacrifice to hold back the flood, now undone by those who hunger for dominion. The final battle unfolded beneath a sky burning with the fires of war and the tears of fallen stars. I faced Zarak once more, but the true enemy lurked in the periphery, the insidious betrayal that would rend the fragile threads of loyalty beyond repair. In a storm of bolter fire and whispered lies, we clashed not only with the God Machine's horrors, but with the demons born from our own hearts. The last betrayal was not a single act, but a symphony of shattered vows, each note echoing across the dying galaxy. And as the war's crescendo reached its terrible peak, I understood that sometimes the deepest wounds are those inflicted by the closest hands. The dying sun cast long shadows over the ruins of the once mighty God Machine. Its shattered spires reached futilely toward the cold stars, a monument to ambition swallowed by time and betrayal. I stood alone amid the crumbled throne room, the weight of countless lives pressing heavy on my soul. The echoes of battle had faded, replaced by a silence so profound it seemed to swallow even the light. Zarek was gone, his immortal fire extinguished, yet his legacy lingered like a ghost, an eternal reminder of the cost of power, of the fragile line between salvation and destruction. I traced my fingers over the cracked sigil of the Emperor, feeling the cold stone beneath my touch. Immortality was a cruel gift. To live beyond the stars, beyond time, was to watch empires rise and fall like the tides, never truly belonging, always burdened by loss. The galaxy would remember the War of the Beast as a chapter of fire and ruin, of heroes and monsters intertwined in tragedy. But it was more than that. It was a story of sacrifice, of betrayal, and of the relentless struggle to hold on to hope in the face of oblivion. As the stars blinked coldly overhead, I whispered a vow, to carry the memory of those fallen, to bear the scars of the past, and to prepare for the dawn that must one day follow this twilight. For in every end there is a beginning, and so the empire fades, but the war never truly ends.